The MK1 TT is undeniably a fantastic project car.
It's by far and away the cheapest all-wheel drive stick-shift turbo coupe that you can buy right now.
These engines are reliable and they tune like crazy. On top of that, even a good example will run you only about $6,000 depending on which one you go with.
You shouldn't wonder if the MK1 TT is a good project car. It is. The question you should be asking is which one is the best for your goal.
In the United States, we got 3 different engine variants that are found commonly. There was the 180 horsepower version, the 225, and the 3.2.
There are pros and cons for whichever version you end up going with. I'm going to deep dive into each model and explain which one is going to be best for you depending on what your specific goals are.
We'll start with the base 180 horsepower version, commonly referred to as the 180. This car came in either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, but it's more common to find them in front-wheel drive. These cars also came stock with a 5-speed transmission, though past 2003 they can be found with a 6-speed manual. This one's also available with the CVT transmission, which I don't really recommend. This car ran a derivative of the 1.8T engine found in the GTI of the same time.
These produced about 180 horsepower and 200 foot-pounds of torque. Later models used the KO3 Sport, which had a bit more pep and boosted it up to 190 horsepower and 210 foot-pounds of torque.
This is a lot of performance considering that you can find this car on Craigslist for $3,000 to $4,000 pretty regularly.
This car can be easily identified by its single exit exhaust. The 225 came with a different version of the 1.8T. This engine was found in the Euro-exclusive Audi S3 of the time.
Side note, this is a very weird looking car.
From the factory, this car pushed 225 horsepower and 230 foot-pounds of torque.
This car was mated exclusively to a 6-speed manual and a Haldex all-wheel drive.
This 1.8T ran a KO4 turbo, which is the same turbo you can find in the RS4 of the era. This specific engine also came with forged pistons and blocks from the factory, making the rods the only weak point to running really high horsepower.
If you're not sure if someone's trying to sell you a 225 or a 180
disguised as a 225, a really easy way to tell is to look at the engine bay. The 225 came with twin intercoolers. Consequently, there is a charge pipe going from the turbo outlet across the engine to the first intercooler. This won't be there on the 180.
The 3.2 is a more unique version of the TT. It originally came out along with the first DSG put in a production Audi, so this is the only automatic transmission Audi TT I would actually recommend. This car makes about 250 horsepower and 236 foot-pounds of torque, but this is all incredibly linear. First and foremost, if that's not enough horsepower for you, it is very expensive to boost the numbers on this engine. Since it's naturally aspirated from the factory, and on top of that it's a high compression V6, it costs a lot of money to put any sort of forced induction on this vehicle. On top of that, the only thing you can really tune is the DSG. People don't generally buy the 3.2 to tune it. They buy it for the noise. It's an iconic noise for sure, but I personally love the sound of a Turbo 4 just as much. The 3.2s and the 225s are pretty close when it comes to price. Good examples can be found anywhere from $6,000 all the way up to around $10,000 to $12,000, depending on the year and condition.
Back to the main question at hand.
Which one of these cars is best for you? Honestly, that depends a lot on your budget and what you really want out of the car. If you want a cheap and fun turbo daily driver that's decently quick and fun to drive, the 180 might be fine for you. The main limiting factor with the 180 is the KO3 turbo. This turbo, even if you have the newer KO3S version, really is only going to push about 260 horsepower max. If you want more than that, you're going to have to swap in a KO4, and at that point you might as well have just gotten the 225.
The KO3 engine in the 180, when tuned with bolt-ons, will net you close to 230 horsepower and torque, which honestly is a lot for a car of this size, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. This engine is a lot more common though, so more tunes and parts will be available, and it's probably easier to work on than the 225, which has some exclusive parts.
If you want a 300 foot-pound of torque daily driver that pushes you back in your seat every single time you step on the throttle, and on top of that is faster than 90% of the cars on the road, might be worth it to get the 225.
While the 225 is a bit more expensive than the 180, with just a tune, downpipe, intake, front mount intercooler, and exhaust, you'll be close to around 300 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque. On top of that, the 225 can run an E85 tune by a company called Motiza, which will net you 400 foot-pounds of torque.
That is a ton for an all-wheel drive car this small. Considering all of that can be had for under $8,000 to $10,000, this car is a performance bargain. If you want a really linear performance and something that sounds better than almost any other car you could buy, the 3.2 is also a fantastic car.
If you want to push truly high horsepower, namely anything from like 360 all the way up to 700,
the 1.8T, either version, is going to need to be rebuilt, so at that point it really doesn't matter which car you go with. You should pick it based on the transmission you want, be that a 5-speed or a 6-speed.
The 3.2 won't be as quick or handle as well as a tuned 225, but it's got an incredibly linear power band and an engine that is downright addictive.
If you're dead set on forced induction and a 3.2, it's going to be an expensive adventure, but it'll net you a car that almost nobody has and will get you props at any car meet you go to. The 1.8T can match pretty much any power level that the 3.2 puts out with forced induction for much cheaper, since those engines have been built for a really long time and people have been tuning them like crazy for just as long. If you take anything away from this video, it's this. You should buy a Mark 1 TT. This is by far and away the cheapest all-wheel drive, turbo, stick-shift coupe that you can find out of any car ever built. Cars are super pricey right now, and in my humble opinion as someone who looks on Craigslist almost daily, I think the Audi TT is severely undervalued and deserves another look. If you want to see more content like this, or watch me build project cars like Mark 1 Audi TT 225, like and subscribe. Either way, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.